Welcome back. From the race for governor to Washington politics to world hotspots, there is no greater authority in Florida than former governor and U.S. Senator Bob Graham. Senator, Governor, thanks for joining us.
Alan, thank you for the invitation.
Let's first talk about the governor's race, and I know that you may have a favorite in that race. Of course, your daughter Gwen is one of the front runners for the race, former congresswoman from the Tallahassee area. Let me ask you this. Phil Levine, the former mayor of Miami Beach, he has been spending millions of dollars here and across the state, getting his name recognition up there, and it shows in recent polling showing that he's jumped to a lead. I would imagine that's got you concerned. I know that you have the Graham campaign has its calculation about when you go up on the air, but everything is about momentum.
Yeah, you know, it's difficult running against a person who can self-fund and just write checks for whatever the cost may be. Gwen's not in that position. She's been working hard to get herself as well known as possible and to build her treasury so that she can pay for the cost of television advertising. The theory is that once you go up on the air, you need to be in a position to stay through the election, which means till late August. I think she's getting very close to being in that position, and pretty soon the viewers of Channel 7 will have a chance to see Gwen on television talking about why she should and will be the next governor of Florida.
If you were to talk about what her campaign is all about, what her central point is, what would that be? And I say that in the context, again, not picking on one of her other challengers, but Phil Levine made a big deal after Parkland to talk about assault weapons and dealing with that. When it comes to Congresswoman Graham, what is her essential argument about why she should be the next governor?
I think she should be the next governor because she has demonstrated the ability to bring people together to get a result. When she was in Congress, she was rated as the member of the Florida delegation who had the greatest ability, demonstrated success in bringing people together. She was 8th among 435 members of Congress in that capability. Whoever is elected governor is going to have to be dealing probably with a legislature of the other party, and whether you can actually accomplish all the things you talk about will largely be based on your skills of negotiating across the aisle. So I think, and on the issues, I think she has a very strong position. You mentioned gun safety, but also on education, where she has worked for 7 years in education in the public schools, as well as the economy and the environment. She's well prepared in terms of her knowledge of policy to be the next governor of Florida.
You know, people always talk about wanting both sides to work together for a common goal, but when you look at polling, it seems that both Republicans and Democrats, their core, their base, want people not to go to the middle and talk about compromise, but fight for whether it's Democratic values or Republican values. It's become such a partisan environment.
Yeah. It has become a partisan environment, and I think that puts even a greater emphasis on people who can overcome that partisanship. I do not believe the American people want a government of gridlock that can't perform the basic functions that they depend upon in terms of things the federal government does and the state government. I believe that Gwen is where Floridians want their government to be. I saw a recent poll within the last week that something like 75% of Democrats want government to be more functional. 75% of Republicans want government to be more functional. Gwen's going to be meeting that expectation.
Your take on the U.S. Senate race. Again, Governor Rick Scott is already up on television, and I see, as of today, the U.S. Chamber is also airing pro Rick Scott ads. You know, Senator Nelson is not up on television yet. He's been in office for a long time. You have served with him. How do you handicap this race?
I believe Bill Nelson will win. I think that he's done a good job for Florida. He is a senator who knows the state of Florida and knows the issues that are most important to our state, such as resisting offshore oil drilling, and has been a strong leader in that. He's facing somewhat the same problem that my daughter Gwen is, and that is a self-funded candidate who can write whatever amount of checks are required. And he's working to get into the position that he can go up on the air. Now, his race is not going to be until November, so he's got an even longer period of time to cover once he decides to begin his paid television advertisement.
Let's talk about...
But the people who are watching this program and the viewers of Channel 7 are going to have lots of time, I'm certain, to see both Senator Nelson and Governor Scott between now and November.
And we continue with our discussion with Senator Bob Graham in a moment. And we continue with our discussion with Senator Bob Graham. I want to get your take for a moment in terms of what's happening in Washington. Off the top, North Korea. I mean, this has been an issue that has bedeviled president after president going back many years now. President Trump was roundly criticized for the rhetoric he used in the last 6 months or so, but now we're seeing, for the first time since the 1950s, talks between the U.S. and North Korea and South Korea. What's your take?
Yeah, I think President Trump deserves credit for creating an environment in which not only the United States and North Korea, but South Korea and China, other interested parties are coming to the table. This is very encouraging. It was only a few months ago that we were talking about the possibility of preemptive strikes, of even nuclear war with North Korea. Now that we're at a point that we're talking instead about peace and denuclearization, maybe even reunification of the Koreas, is a very important thing for the world, and I believe President Trump deserves to take a significant amount of the credit for that.
You know, given that, there are a lot of Republicans who say this is what is important. This is what's important to the American people and to the safety and the national security of this country, and they reinforce that the fact that the Russia investigation is, not that important, and that it's a distraction to what really is important to most Americans.
Well, I disagree that it's not important. I think George Washington will roll over in his grave if the allegation was made that a foreign power of that time, which would have probably been France or Great Britain, were trying to involve themselves in American domestic politics. I mean, there could not be any greater affront to our sovereignty than that. Now, the jury is still out with the various ongoing investigations as to whether, in fact, there was any complicity in the Russian involvement in our election, and what we should be doing about it. But I don't think it's a minor, insignificant issue. I think it goes to the core of our democratic system.
Here's a question about the Iran deal. You know, on one hand, we're doing something that we have really not done in many years in terms of reaching out and talking nuclear deal with North Korea, but at the same time we're talking about throwing out the nuclear deal with Iran. Is there a problem with the consistency of that message, and is there a message to Iran that, or to North Korea, that you can't always hold the U.S. accountable for the deals that it makes?
Well, you've just given my answer. I think there is an inconsistency of talking about junking a deal that was made just a few months ago. At the same time, we're talking to North Korea about negotiating a new, very similar denuclearization arrangement. If I were the president of North Korea, I'd have in the back of my mind, is this for real? Will the Americans treat us the same way they did the Iranians, go into a deal and then a few months later walk away from it? So our consistency and our reliability are at stake here, and I'm hopeful that people like the new Secretary of State may see the importance of viewing these two issues, Iran and North Korea, as Siamese twins in negotiation.
We have less than a minute left, but I did want to ask you about your ongoing attempt to investigate the Sarasota connection to 9/11. Obviously, the families are suing. You believe there is a lot more information about that that family that was in Sarasota that needs to come out. Where does that stand, and what are your hopes that we're going to finally get real answers in terms of what was going on here?
I'm confident that we will eventually get real answers, and the real answers are going to point to Saudi Arabia's very deep involvement in 9/11. It could come out of a trial that's going on in New York where the families of the victims are suing the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It could come out in a federal court which is considering the information that was gathered here in Sarasota about the involvement that occurred between 3 of the hijackers and a prominent Saudi family. Or Congress could pass legislation requiring a landmine of information relative to 9/11 to be released to the public. All those are possibilities, but from somewhere the American people are going to find the true facts, and America will be dealing with Saudi Arabia based on reality, not on press releases.
Former Senator, former Governor Bob Graham, thanks for joining us. It's always great to have you here in town.
Great. Alan, thank you very much.
All right, thanks.